Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us wherever you are and on whatever platform you're listening on. As always, your support is so greatly appreciated. Today, in this episode, we're really going to get into some nuts and bolts and some more technical, finer points of the game, which I'm always excited to be talking about. Today specifically, we're going to be focusing on some high-low action and the way to implement that and the way to hopefully get the best looks out of those sets. If you're the type of coach who already runs those, or if you're looking to run some high-low action, hopefully this interview is informative and is useful to you. So I'm really excited to get into this topic, and I'm really excited to have my guest with me, Coach Mark Miller, with me to talk about it. Coach, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk about it, but just excited to talk.
Love it. Always love talking sports, love talking basketball, love getting into the nuts and bolts and the finer details of some of this stuff. So looking forward to it. And as always, Coach, let's start with your basketball journey. Where is the game taking you? Where are you at right now? And where's the sport kind of taking you in between?
Well, that's a great question. My story's a little different than most. I'm going to start my 35th year coaching. I started as a high school coach in Maryland, in a very small high school in the western part of Maryland. I was there for 11 years. And then I had the opportunity to be at the right place at the right time and went from a high school coach to an assistant at Georgia Tech, which nowadays would never happen, most likely. I was very fortunate at the time to get that opportunity. So I spent 3 years there and on the women's side as well. And I went from there to Loyola College as the associate head coach, which is in Baltimore. And then a small school in Maryland at Mount St. Mary's. I spent 2 different stints there. And then I became a head coach. Had the opportunity. I was ready. I wanted to be a head coach in the women's game. Had the opportunity to go to Norwich University in Vermont. It was a Division III school. I'd never been there, never been to Vermont, but had a great opportunity. I spent 3 wonderful years there, and it was a great experience for me to be at Division III, and I enjoyed it a lot. And then after 3 years there, I kind of came back home. My wife and I and kids decided to come back, south a little bit, and we went to a Division II school, Holy Family University outside of Philadelphia. At the time, it was a top 10 school in the country and, basketball-wise, and it was a great opportunity for me. I spent 7 wonderful years there. Had a lot of success, had a lot of really good players. Been to 2 Sweet 16s, just had some success with great, great players. And then, now I'm at the University of South Carolina at Aiken. I came down here. I'm getting ready to start my 5th year. I took the job. We kind of a little bit of rebuilding, so to speak. Has great facilities and great support and all that. And it was just the right time for me and my family to make a move. So I've been here 5 years. I've loved getting ready to start my 5th year. I've loved it. It's a great fit for us. I'm not going to lie. I love the weather. I like the hot. I like it down here a lot. It's been a great journey for me. 35 years is a long time, but I've enjoyed all of it. And I feel like I still got a ways to go. And people tease me that, I might be doing this when I'm 75. So we'll see what happens.
No, that's great. And I like the part that you just mentioned about, just being a lifelong learner, feeling like there's always things to learn, always things to pick up on along the way. And I'm with you about the weather. I'm out here in Arizona, and I don't need to be doing winters up north too much. So I'm right on board with you with that.
Absolutely. I don't miss the snow, that's for sure.
No, absolutely not. Especially with basketball season in the winter. I don't need to have all these weather changes and all this stuff going on. I'll take my nice weather. Yeah, sure. I can imagine. So you talked about the experience that you have with coaching, which leads in really well into this question before we get into our topic. I know we're talking about something very specific today, but in general, with your offensive identity as a coach, what principles have stayed relatively constant with you and what you like to emphasize? And are there things that maybe you've done away with or changes that you've made throughout the years?
Right. That's a great question. Like most coaches, I like to play fast. However, I don't want to play so fast that we're turning the ball over 35 times a game. So I want to kind of control it and with how fast we play, but still looking to play fast. So that's one thing. I'm really, in the big scheme of things, I'm really a five-man motion coach. That's what I enjoy running. That's what I would like to run. However, that's hard to find the right personnel at this level to always do that. I've had some teams that I've ran five-man motion in the past, and we had a lot of success with it. I love the flexibility it gives, and the thing about it is it's hard to scout. It's hard to prepare for. The teams that I have had that have ran it very well, a lot of teams will start in man and then we backdoor them, or we flare screen, or we, curl it, and all of a sudden now they're playing a 2-3 zone because they can't guard it.
Right.
So that's what I really liked. But I'm really old school in the fact that, like many people right now, there aren't many post players that like to play with their back to the basket. I'm old school in that fact that, we're going to score on the block. We're going to score off the bounce, get to the free throw line, and then shoot the threes. I tease my team now, if we're shooting 30, 35 threes a game, I'm probably a little worried.
Yeah.
And I know that's very different than the way the game is played right now, from the NBA down to the WNBA to college, men, women, high school. It's really get to the basket or shoot the three. So what I've tried to do is, sometimes we play a little bit smaller, 1 through 4, and then have one back to the basket kind of kid. And that's kind of been my big theory. I love motion, but it's hard to teach. And as coaches, it's hard to give up that control. In motion, I don't know what we're getting ready to do.
Right.
I just have to be able to live with that sometimes. But, that's really what I am. But I knew when I came to USC Aiken, and my first year here, my only recruit that year was a 6'1", athletic, kind of raw, offensively skilled post player. So I knew, and she was not, didn't have the skill set to play on the perimeter, to do a whole lot in a ball screen as a freshman. So I knew I had to do something different. And that's when I really started, spending a lot of time thinking about, high-low stuff and things out of that. And that's kind of where I've come from the last 5 years.
And well, that speaks to something I know for a lot of coaches that they have to adjust to is the personnel that they have and work within the personnel and the skill sets of the players they have. And they might be able to develop and kind of broaden a player's game, but they might come with certain skills that you have to work with, and you might have to adapt and make adjustments to your own offense to suit where they're at. And then maybe be able to branch out and get them to do some different things. So I think that's just kind of being versatile.
Yes. I mean, that's kind of, that's kind of the thing with the kid that I'm talking about. When she was a freshman, her outside of 10 feet sometimes was a little scary. As a senior, she was able to, to do some stuff on the high post. She was able to do some stuff in the pick and roll, and she could develop some other skills. She always had a great motor. Her motor was second to none, and that's what made her such a great player, and she was so athletic. But she had a great motor and just needed to learn the game and get skilled-wise, and she did that. So you're right, I was able to do a few more things with her as she got a little older.
It's always easy to accelerate the teaching and learning process when you have a player of a high motor who's putting in the work and willing to get better. I know that's for
Absolutely.
sure too.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
with our topic today, specifically kind of diving into implementing and running high-low sets, I want to start actually with a more general observational question with you, which is, in your experience, are you seeing a lot of coaches running sets looking for high-low action? Is that something as a trend that you're seeing occur? I'm just curious about what you're noticing with that first off.
I think probably if you've got a post player on your team that is skilled and can score and do some stuff, yeah, you've got a set or two in or three, or you might have your man offense is what is a high low. But yeah, there is still that trend. There still is some versatility in how you run some high-low stuff, whether it's out of a horn set and you get into it, whether it's at a more traditional Kansas set, the ways to get into it. But I think everybody is running some form of high-low in their offensive sets, just because it's an easy way. It's difficult, I think, to run unless you're really, really good in all five spots. I think it's difficult to run, all the time, and that's the only thing you run.
Mm.
But I think everybody has something to do with a high-low in their offense.
And so then I'm sure a lot of the coaches then who are listening to this, they may also have similar experiences seeing that level of frequency as well. So let's kind of start with the building blocks, I suppose, of running some high-low action. What are let's start with like the foundational principles that you need to make sure that your players have skill wise or just decision making wise in order for that set to be run the way that you want it to?
Well, I tell you what I had found. I think the hardest position to fill for me is the four spot, because the four
Okay.
spot has to be able to be a great passer. They have
Yep.
to be able to hopefully knock down the three to spread the floor out and be able to beat you off the bounce. This past year, I played a 5'10" guard at the four spot. She kind of played bigger than that, but she did
Uh-huh.
all those things that I needed her to do,
Right.
which made us a whole lot better. She's really a three player, but because she could do all those things, I used her as a four, which helped the five man
Mm.
tremendously. So I think the most important spot is the other post. What can that other post do? Are they a low scoring? Can they score too? If you watch Kansas men, they normally play with two bigs and they both can do both. They can step out, shoot it, drive it,
Right.
pound it inside.
Kind of interchangeable.
We only had one. We only had one back to the basket player. So I took advantage of that. I never posted up my four man. They were always the person to come high. So I think finding somebody to do what you want your four man to do is probably the most important thing.
And so, and so with that, just as a follow-up question, then it seems like a coach they have to really be like either looking for that player, and if that player doesn't exist, it sounds like in your case, then a coach may have to rethink their positions and may have to move somebody who might traditionally play as a three, as you said, and be willing to work with them and kind of bring them up to that four spot.
Yes, that's exactly what we did with ours. And some coaches, whatever side the ball comes to, that post player posts up. I didn't do that because I didn't want my four player posting up. That was not a place for her to be successful. So if it came to her side, she always screened across for the other big and then came high. There's my high low. So now I have my best person that can play the high post high always, and my best person that played the low post was always low. So in some ways I played to our strengths, and I hit our weaknesses from our 4 and 5. And that for us was very successful. The 1, 2, and 3, if they can shoot it and spread the floor, that's just the best. And then we want them to beat you off the bounce and create space and create movement and that kind of stuff. But if we had a point guard that was an okay shooter but did a great job facilitating, but there were times, especially late in the year last year, where teams didn't guard her and then they sat on the post and then you had a hard time getting it in there. So those 3 other perimeter players got to be a threat and got to be able to do some stuff, or you got to hide them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the 4, taking advantage of what the 4 does and how they can do it, and knowing what your 4 can do. Not all 4. Like the best thing I did last year was when I decided, okay, my 4-man is going to be this kid who's really a 3 because she can do what I'm asking that spot to do. I'll live with the fact that she might be a little smaller.
Mm-hmm.
I'll live with the fact because now offensively she's made us all better, and that's what I did.
Well, it seems that the advantage for that particular player is, that they were a little bit smaller, but the other things that player had in their skill set, by putting them in that position, it seems like that just created more opportunities for the other players on the floor because of the versatility that 4 player had.
That is good. That is exactly what happened. And that's why, to me, I go back, I'll even take it even back further. The hardest position for me to recruit is the 4 spot, because I'd like them to do a little bit of everything pretty well.
Yeah.
So I sometimes live with a little bit smaller 4 player because they can drive it, shoot the 3, be a good passer. It can be so versatile offensively. So I might live a little bit with a little bit of size difference because of what they can do. If I get a big kid that, a 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2" kid that can play on the perimeter and shoot the 3 and put you on the bounce and guard, I'm in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
To find at this level, hard to recruit, because normally if you're that big and have that kind of skill set, you're going to go play Division I level.
Yeah. No, So you, in your situation, and probably for a lot of the coaches that are watching, it's about cultivating it, and it's about, working with what you have, and, taking things that might be perceived weaknesses, like you mentioned, of 4 players a little bit smaller. Well, there's advantages to that as well. And if you're able to, emphasize those, and like you mentioned earlier, kind of mask the weaknesses or kind of hide those other possible deficiencies, then hopefully it won't be as big of an issue as it might first seem on the surface. So
Correct.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I actually want to follow up with what you mentioned about the 4 player, and with some high-low sets and high-low action, there is decision making, and there are choices in circumstances that players make. And so with your 4 player, because they have that ability to make decisions, and they get to read what's going on, read the defense, and make the correct decision based on what they see. Is that something that you found that you have to sort of teach in a player about how to assess and take what's there in front of you and make the best decision? Is that something you found that you kind of let the players instinctually decide? I'm just curious about your philosophy on that.
Yeah. Hopefully they instinctively have that, but I'm going to be honest with you, most people don't. So I try to give them reads. Right, the defense is guarding the post, guarding you this way and guarding the low post this way. This is what you do. If help is sucking in, we're going to skip it and throw it to the wing, to the corner. If we don't have either one of those 2 and we can't do any of that, then your 3rd decision is reverse the basketball and let's get into the next action. So I had more success teaching them reads and hoping, and as we got better at it, they were able to read quicker.
Right.
As you first get started, the reads become really slow. They make the right one, but it's really slow. And by the time they go to make the pass, it's too late, and away we go. So it's going to take a little bit of time to do that. Sometimes we'll break it down, only defense on the post, on the low block. So what are we going to do? How are they going to guard you? Maybe there's only defense on you are they cheating? So now you got a wide open 15 to 17 footer, or are they up, up in your tight, and you got to be able to make a play from there. The other skill that I found to be really, probably the one thing that I wasn't 100% sure about when I went to start running high-low was, could we make the high-low pass over top?
Yeah.
That's a tough pass.
Yep.
Tough pass at any level. Could we make that pass?
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled personally with myself when I went to make this decision, could we do that? And we worked on it before I made some decisions on whether I was going to run this offense because that's such a big pass.
Yep.
That you got to be able to make it. And we worked on it and we got better. That helped my confidence to say, okay, we can make that pass. This is the right offense for me. And the way we go, I think guards are able to make that pass with some finesse and some touch and some direction. I think sometimes the post players might struggle with that. So I had a freshman 4 player who last year, when she struggled with that, making that simple pass. My senior, who was the guard, who played most of the minutes there, she was very good at it. So that's a skill that I think you got to teach every day. Until they get it, after they know the read, and then be able to make the touch pass away from the defense to where the offense can catch it. So I think, it's a more of a read. Most kids don't have the instinctive ability to make that. Some do, and when you get one of those, then it makes it a little bit easier.
So a little light bulb that sort of went off in my head as you were mentioning that, because logically it makes a lot of sense that if you have that more traditional 4 who's used to maybe playing more towards back of the basket, and now you bring them up high and they have to make that touch pass, that doesn't come naturally to them. That's not a pass that they're used to making. They're used to getting the entry passes maybe,
Correct.
But they're not used to necessarily making those reads. And it also seems like a potential situation for coaches to be aware of is that if you have that more traditional 4 and you're bringing them up high, you're putting that player in a position to potentially make a lot of different reads that maybe they've never made before or had to make before. Am I kind of correct in thinking that?
Absolutely. And, that's the part that you as a coach have to decide whether your personnel fit this. I think that's with any offense, there's everybody talks dribble drive. That's a big hot thing. Well, it's a great offense if you got the right personnel. I don't have the right personnel, so I can't run that. So I think knowing your personnel, knowing what your strengths are, and maybe more importantly than that, knowing what your weaknesses are. Mm-hmm. If you know that and can figure out now, that doesn't mean we don't work on it. That doesn't mean we don't try to improve that. But I think it's important that you know what you're trying to get. And I talk to my players a lot about, this is option 1. We're going to do this. All right, if we can't do this, then we're going to go option 2. Well, if we can't do this, then we're going to go option 3. And if we get to option 4, we're in trouble. It's kind of that mentality and teaching them what to read off of as we go. Now, once you go and you make some adjustments and you make a little – for me, a little quick hitter or a little wrinkle that maybe they haven't seen before. Now you can steal a basket here and there. And that's what we've got really good at.
Right. And I think a coach once told me about the different options. They said option 4 is a shot clock violation.
Correct. After that. Going out of bounds, so you're not giving them a layup.
Yeah. But I think that kind of speaks to a larger topic as to whether any set or thing that you run that has potential of multiple reads is that at first it is going to be pretty mechanical. It is going to be pretty slow, and that we can't necessarily assume that those instincts are there. But if you stick with it and you have some patience with it, I'm sure you can attest to it, that the more opportunities that they get to make the correct read and the more opportunities where they get in those situations, it does get better over time, but there's just that learning curve that you have to be patient with.
Yeah, I think we as coaches sometimes we get in such a big hurry.
You're speaking to me.
that it's going to take time. This year's team for me, I got 7 freshmen. It's going to take us some time. They're very skilled and very, they're good players, but it's going to take some time. And I think whatever you're doing, you got to understand maybe how long it's going to take you. When I put regular 5-man motion in many, many years ago, I was very fortunate that I had a team that was very bright basketball wise, and putting my motion in normally, takes about a year that completely. And this group was able to do it in a half a year, which made us averaging first part of the year, we're averaging 50 a game, giving up, 30. The second half of the year, we're averaging 80 a game and, giving up 40. So we turned it around. And I think that's the case with any offense. Run that, and the more experience you had. Last year, we had a bunch of experienced kids, 2 seniors in the post, a point guard that had some playing time. We didn't have a lot of depth with experience, but our starters were pretty experienced. So putting it in was pretty easy, went pretty fast until we got, with players off the bench, and then we would slow down a little bit. So I think you got to be patient. You got to break it down. You got to start at, points of it. We were doing stuff early in the year, and they didn't even know why we were doing it, but it was for our offense.
Yeah. I've been there too, and I think that I have gotten a little bit better with it over the past few years. But I know for me as a coach, I can sometimes see the finish line, and I know where the finish line is, and I'm trying to accelerate that process to get them there. But you can't really force that process to occur, speed it up, But when it clicks, and that's what I found with the players, like whether it's running a high-low or the motion offense, whatever it is. Once they get it, like they got it, and they'll understand the process of what's going on. But as you also mentioned, if you have players who don't understand why you're doing something, then that should also be a cause for concern, because then they're just going through they're just doing things without really understanding the purpose behind it. And we don't want to be in those situations.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think players nowadays, they want to know why we're doing it before we do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point by you, that, you got to tell them why we're doing it and what we're trying to take advantage of, and then let's do it.
Yeah. And just to kind of put a bow on that thought, I think that if the players know why they're doing something, then it'll help them in a lot of situations where if they don't necessarily get, the perfect situation they want, or maybe they don't have like the perfect move that they're ready to go to, but if they know what they're trying to do or why they're doing something, then they can probably adapt, and they can probably come up with something else that they can do because they know the purpose of what they're trying to get to. So
yes,
that helps a bit. It just keeps them from going through the mechanical motion, so to speak.
I agree.
So we talked a little bit about the person up high and the versatility that they need, and now as we're kind of thinking a little bit about the low in the high-low type of action, in your experience, and I know that you are at the collegiate level, are you still finding that there are some skills that need to be established even at your level for the person in the low, for them to be able to work in tandem with the person up high?
Yeah, I do. I think they got to learn how to get open. When it's one-on-one, I always tell them, one-on-one with you and your defender, you better want the ball and you better score the ball. So I think you have to teach them how to get open. You got to teach them the duck in. I think the duck in high-low is huge, and if they don't do I call it a big aggressive duck in, then you're not going to get it, and the defense doesn't have to work real hard. And then, if you don't have a big, strong, aggressive duck in, you take away the lob because the defense isn't going to worry about that duck in. So I think you got to teach them how to get open. I think that's the first thing. And then I think you got to, it's the old school, I teach all those moves that everybody teaches, but I really think you better have 2. I know in a defensive mindset, I still believe there aren't very many players that can hit a turnaround jump shot in the women's game. Just my belief. You get them a step and a half off the block and you make them shoot over you defensively, you got a chance. I mean, the good ones are going to make them, but there aren't very many of them.
Yeah.
So I think that's part, for me defensively, I'm like, okay, they got to shoot over us, not around us type of thing. That sounds really easy, but it's harder. But because of that, I don't think kids hit a turnaround jumper. The kid that I had that just graduated was an all-league, all-region player, and really what she did was finish drop steps and rebounded and finished putbacks. Wasn't great at some other stuff, but that's what she had to do, and it worked out great for her. But we didn't, that was the kind of, I'd teach her the jump hook, the up and under, the face up and all that, because I think there are times that you need to be able to use them. And I was always about getting players better, but really catch it, drop step it, and score it. I'm a big believer in a jump hook, especially with undersized posts who we might have every now and then to have to play in there.
Right.
So I think you still have to teach it and you still have to rep it. But really, if they have two really good moves, I think you're good.
And so to add on to something that you mentioned at the beginning, it seems like also you are working with your player down low about their own assertiveness and the way that they make their move. You mentioned about the duck in, and that the ball isn't just naturally gonna come to them or find them, that they really have to work on making their presence known, establishing that position, making that duck in, and doing the things they need to basically demand that they're getting the ball.
Yes. I think you have to be aggressive to the ball, want the basketball. I've got that young lady last year she was super at making herself big. If the ball was anywhere thrown close to her, she had unbelievable hands. But she demanded the basketball. Now, it took a little bit of time. Her freshman year, she was, still waiting for somebody else to make a play until I finally had to say to her, look, we're coming through you every single possession down the floor first, and then take advantage of whatever else they give us. But we're coming through you. I have a young lady right now that's a freshman who's raw, same type of thing, going to be raw, and she doesn't say boo. But she's 6'3", that plays really bigger than that. But I have to teach her, how to be assertive, how to be aggressive, how to be confident in telling those guards to throw me the ball. So it's a work in progress, but it's something that I think comes, and you just got to remind them. And I think the more experience they get, the more confidence they get, the better they are. I kind of in that old school that don't assume they know anything, just teach the fundamentals and then, where to post up, how to post up, where to go when the ball goes there. All those things, just assume they don't know. And then once you figure it out, that maybe you can go a little bit faster once you figure out, your team.
Well, I suppose if you don't make those assumptions, then that leaves the opportunity for them to potentially positively surprise you, and
yes, yes.
And then you can move the timetable along, like you said.
That's exactly right. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I get it. And it actually brings up another good point about what you mentioned about the type of offense that maybe a coach wants to run or they want to implement, and that a coach might be thinking that, okay, we're going to install, this particular offense, maybe where we implement the post or we do something like that. But a coach should also keep in mind that, does my player have that mindset right now that or do they need to be told, like, hey, you need to make sure you're, like you mentioned, demanding the ball inside, or, you're asserting yourself, because, that this offense or this particular set or whatever can't quite work if you aren't, getting big, getting position, and the defense isn't, taking you seriously. So I think that's a good point too, is making sure that your personnel understands what their objectives are and what they need to be doing and how they need to be asserting themselves to get what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about I know a question that was brought up to me when I told somebody I was discussing this topic, and you actually did touch on it a little bit earlier, which is the passing that takes place in a high-low set, and getting the touch pass, or getting that good pass in from high to low. Is that something that you have found has taken you a lot of time to build in? Are there certain things that you've had to teach, some finer points or some points of emphasis to really make sure that pass and that work between the high-low, getting that pass in, is exactly how you want it?
Yeah, it is. The high-low with a lob, I tried to teach my kids to make that pass from their forehead, almost a shot. If you can,
Okay.
I tried to tell them to shoot the ball as the pass. If you can envision that, so many kids try to throw the high-low from the waist, and A, it's going to get picked off. B, it's going to take forever to get into the post. So I made them, we're going to make that pass from our forehead. So we would flash high, catch it, face up, get the ball at our chin. And then if we were going to make the high-low lob over top, then the ball had to come to our forehead. And then I tried to tell them almost it's a shot out of it. And we broke it down. We started with the footwork of flashing high, pivoting the right way, catching it, getting the ball at your chin, so that the ball isn't low. If you're going to put it on the floor and you got it at your chin, it's a lot easier. If you got to put it from low to high to make the high-low, takes too long. Too long. So I catch it high, get it in the chin, try to make the pass from the forehead. We also had to teach where to make the pass.
Yeah.
I think is a whole nother feel, a whole nother read. Who are you passing it to? Like I said, this young lady, you could throw it on the moon and she was going to go catch it. So
Yeah.
for her, it was, for us passers who maybe weren't great passers, it was a little easier. But I had another young lady, you had to throw it exactly the right place every single time or she wasn't going to catch it. So I think you have to know those kind of things. And but it takes time, and it's a breakdown in the small groups, who's making the pass. This is how we're going to do it. And then, it's a kind of combination between the passer at the top and the post on the bottom with their changing of their footwork, from a post, trying to get it from the wing to now you're trying to get it from the top of the lob, spinning and sealing and then throwing over top. So definitely a fundamental that you got to teach and you got to work over.
And then it sounds like from what you're saying, then actually you brought it up earlier that there's no assumptions made if you want to do this well. And you talked about how it comes down all the way to the footwork and all the way to where you're catching it and where you're passing it from. And that, I think, a point of emphasis from just what we've talked about so far is that if you want to get something like this done right, it doesn't hurt to break every part of this down and make sure that every single part of it is how you want it to look before trying to, say like, all right, this is just what we're going to do. Like taking it step by step and perfecting each step of it along the way. It sounds like to me is what's worked best for you, and probably beyond just in this high-low set capacity.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, when I started implementing it, I would play 3 on the side, throw it to the point guard, throw it to the wing, the point guard go to the corner, and then can we enter it to the post out of those 2 spots?
Mm-hmm.
All right, make the read out of there. Okay, then the next I'd say, okay, the 4 who's on the other block, opposite. We're going to throw it, the point guard's going to throw it to the wing, going to go to the corner. When the point guard goes to the corner, the opposite post comes high. Now we're going to make that read. Okay, where's the help at with the guards? Are they in the paint, helping on the big? If not, we're going to skip it, shoot the 3, drive it, throw it back inside. Or is it one-on-one in the post? And now what kind of pass do we got to get? Is it going to be she ducks in and we throw a bounce pass, wrap around bounce pass, or she's being fronted? We pushed her high. Now we got to throw the lob over the top. and then that's our breakdown. And then, all right, we flash the 4, the guard on the other side. Okay, we don't have a high-low. We reverse. What's going to be our action next? So every single step that we did, we broke down.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's the guards and the wings knowing how to throw the ball inside when they need to. And then you go to the high-low from the 4 and the 5 man. How do they, what do they got to do to work together to get it in there? And then what's the other guard on the other side doing? Where's help? Did you spread the floor? Did you stay in the corner? Did you come to the wing? What's our next option if we reverse it to them? So I'm old school, and I think most people nowadays, they might teach the whole and break it down. I kind of went the other way. I told them what we were trying to get, and then they didn't know it. I was breaking it down as we were going with our small groups, and then kind of like, right towards when we start practicing, I could put it all in 5-on-0 because we've already broken it all down, and then build the defense. And then, okay, one day we're going to, defensively, let's guard our motion by switching everything. Now what? Okay, they front automatically all the time. Now what? They didn't guard today. We're not guarding any other guards. So the guards are going to beat us today. When we're just working on our half court set motion, all right, guards got to beat us today. So the ball isn't going to get touched by the 4-man, isn't going to get touched by the 5-man. Guards got to beat us.
Yeah.
All those things as you go and you get experience and you're able to kind of challenge your team a little bit, then you can make some adjustments and do some things as you get going, and that just helps them come game day.
Right. Well, yeah, in the way that you're talking about, you're just kind of building the pieces together, and then you're building, like you said, the 5-on-0, and then putting in the defense, and then putting in the situations, just kind of adding the layers. I know it's kind of a teaching term that we use about layering, and starting with one layer and making sure that we're good there, and then we can build each layer from there. And I think what that also does is that it lets you see like where the points of confusion are, or where the trip up is maybe you got the first layer done, but then there's some hiccup on that second layer. Well, that you can't move to doing something on that third layer unless the second layer has been figured out and solved.
No, that's exactly right. And, and along the way is where you can make some slight adjustments. Maybe it might be where you catch the ball from. I think that's a big part. Yes. We all would like to catch it at certain areas, but sometimes you can't. So what are you going to do then? Mm-hmm. I think there's slight adjustments as you go when you're doing these kind of things, I think make a big difference down the line.
Right. And kind of as a bit of a follow-up, as you're kind of building those layers and you're kind of implementing it, like you mentioned with doing it with the pieces, with the 3, and then just kind of moving up from there. When you're teaching it or watching it, how much of an emphasis is on the timing of it, where if the ball is sticking too long, then that's like, okay, we're in a danger area because the ball's stuck in this one place, and we got to keep things moving. I know that's a big tenet of a lot of offenses, is making sure the ball isn't sticking. So how does that kind of work for you in implementing and teaching that?
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge. I also kind of find ourselves at times being right-sided of the floor, kind of that same idea. So sometimes you just have to, we'll take it away and say, throw the skip pass and let's get into it, or we'll do something to, when we're standing around watching, obviously it's no offense is very good or any good. Well, unless you got Michael Jordan and you throw him the ball and you get out of his way, that your offense is going to be very good. So I think it is a challenge sometimes with high-low because, there's not a whole lot of movement. There's some movement, but it's pretty, everybody knows what you're doing, So I think you got to get a little bit creative with how maybe you get into it. Maybe, you run it, we're going to run it from a break this time, as a secondary break. It's going to end up being the same thing to us, but it's going to look differently. So I think that's part of it. I do worry sometimes. Sometimes when we're really struggling offensively, it's we're standing, and then I'll get away from it. I'll go do something else, whether it's some quick hitters in a row, just to mix it up so that we don't get stagnant. I think that's sometimes for us coaches, that's really important that you recognize. If you come down, 3 trips in a row or 2.5 trips or 2 trips in a row, and you don't like what you're getting out of it, go away and come back. And then it's funny because you go away and you run something else, or you run a quick hitter for something else, or you do something else, and all of a sudden now you come back and it's like, oh man, now you just scored 8 in a row thrown over top. It's like, what happened to the defense? But every offense gets that way. And I think as coaches, we've got to do a good job of recognizing it and making those slight adjustments, or running something else, or running a quick hitter, or whatever that may be.
And that made me think of the player that you mentioned that you had who just recently graduated, the one who you said you became quite talented and was always going to always get the ball no matter where you threw it to her. Did you find yourself in situations like that with her where, okay, the ball got to her and everybody else was like, all right, the ball's in her hands now, so we're done? Was that something you had to work through as well, and try and keep things moving so that when it got to her hands, it didn't everyone just didn't stand around?
Yes, it was something that early in her career, she wasn't a great passer out of a double team, and we didn't do a great job of kind of finding the areas for her. But as she got older, especially her last few years, she was able to, read a double team and know where the ball needed to go to. So then, we hope those players made good decisions and got where they needed to be and hit the open shots, because she got double teamed and triple teamed sometimes because of her ability. But yes, we did get caught, when the ball went into her. Most of the time, it's always a good thing when the ball went in, and sometimes when she's shooting over 2 or 3 people, it still might be a good thing, for us, and that's okay. My first year, her freshman year, I did whatever we did had to go through her first, because we just struggled scoring the basketball. So I had to make sure that she got a touch, and I came up with all kind of ways to make sure she got some kind of touch or some kind of look, and then we played out of it. If we're running a cross screen or put her in a strings, diagonal screen, and they took it and they swarmed her, then we got smart enough that we threw out of it and got a wide open 10 or 12 footer or layup. But to run, but I had to do that because that's what we had to do to score. And then that kind of helped everybody else get better. But there is a little concern sometimes that you become stagnant and you watch her when she has the ball. The good thing for us coaches is when your best player has the ball, a lot of times, most of the time, good things happen. So, most of the time I found myself telling people to go rebound, because it became automatic sometimes. When she caught the ball at that certain spot, it was going to go in. So we would get, we'd have our 2, 3, and 4 already heading back on the defensive end, and she hadn't shot the ball yet. So some of those kind of things, we had to talk about on a regular basis, to just get kids to make sure, hey, look, she's really good, but she's going to miss a shot. Mm-hmm. Let's go be yourself the rebound. We'll get back. And then at the end of her career, I always tell everybody, look, relocate, get where you're supposed to be, because she's going to get double teamed and she's going to throw you the ball if you're open and where you're supposed to be. So, combination of two, it gets better as your players get better. But it is definitely a concern.
Yeah. And I think that, it's a process, and I think it's something that you just have to be aware of. And I'm sure watching, practice or watching film and recognizing these things and seeing what everybody else who doesn't have the ball, because, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, that there's a lot of, off-ball action on offense that maybe doesn't necessarily come naturally, and things have to be, taught with that as well.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and just being aware of it. And a follow-up question I had that's kind of on a little bit on the other end of this, just because I know it's something I've had personally, is, if it's, for example, running like a high-low type of set where there are multiple looks and there's multiple reads and there's multiple decisions that can be made. I know that I have been in this situation, and a couple other coaches have, where their players they're making decisions and they're going through the motions of what they need to do, but then a player isn't like making a decision to score or putting themselves in a position to take that shot or to take it to the basket. And so have you found, and not even just running a high low, but just, in general, that you are also teaching players like, this is your opportunity, you should be taking this shot, you should be driving it to the basket, this is your wide open shot that you need to be taking right now? Is that something you kind of have to coach in terms of like, this is the right decision for you to be a little bit selfish and do what you need to do?
Yes, absolutely. I think, you know, as the game goes and the players, sometimes they don't understand. Like I had a young lady today that, you know, decided to pass up a 7-footer for a 3-footer. And her 3-footer then became 3 people around her. So I just said, look, that you made a great read, you got yourself open, you curled in the middle lane. That 7-footer that's right there, you know, in the paint, it's you're wide open, elevated. That's a 10 times better shot than that 3-footer that you just took with 3 people on you.
Right.
That's one. And then I think the biggest one is, you know, let's say I'm on a high low and the 4-man comes high and their man is sitting in the paint and you still make that pass.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's the hard one. And it's really hard when the kid says, well, coach, I'm 0 for 4. I'm like, you're right, you are 0 for 4, but you got to shoot it. Like if I'm putting you in that position and it's a 15-footer, it's not a 3, it's a 15-footer or 17-footer, which every college kid and, you know, every high school kid should, you know, hopefully make you know, 40% of the time, you got to take it. Because if you don't, the defense just keeps, you know, cheating and taking away your other stuff. I said, you hit it once, now you got to guard you. Now we make a pass. Now you can rip it and go. So I think you have to teach it, but I also think you got to teach what's a good shot for each kid.
Yeah.
You know, I think that might be the most. I have a, you know, like most of us, a green light club, you know, a yellow light club, and a red light club. And you know, the green light club is you open, shoot it. You know, early in the shot clock, shoot it. You're a 3-point shooter. You're really good, shoot it. But then I have some others that, you know, there's a reason why you're open. You better not shoot it. And I think you got to teach them that. And that's you know, as coaches, that's a hard thing to get across. And for players, that's really a hard thing to take. You know, and I tell mine, look, if you want to be able to shoot the 3, then you got to work on it. You know,
Yeah. It's not a fixed situation necessarily.
Yeah.
It can be fluid.
Right. Yeah. You know, recognize what's a good shot for you and understand that if the time and possession is right, I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've had situations like that too, where players, will pass up shots and they'll not take the opportunity, like you mentioned about the 4-person coming up high, but then by not taking that shot, as you mentioned, well, now they know that you're not going to shoot it, so now they can just sag off on you and go elsewhere, and that takes an opportunity away from your teammate now, because they know that they don't have to really respect you. And I think that is something to be also mindful of, is kind of like that confidence level of your players, and understanding that if they do miss a couple shots, that might be it. They might be done unless you actually tell them, like, you can't be done. You have to keep shooting.
You know, I think you're right. I think that's, you know, as coaches, it's our job is to put them in a position to be successful, you know, with what they can do. And you're right, there are going to be nights that they're going to struggle with confidence because the shot doesn't go, or they, turn the ball over, or whatever the case may be. I think I'm a big old school kind of guy, like most coaches. If you work hard, that's going to make up for some of the mistakes. And we as coaches, we're going to live with some of those mistakes if you work hard. And that's my big thing. I try to tell kids, like, you're going to make a mistake. You're going to turn the ball over. You're going to miss a defensive assignment. You're going to miss a layup. But if you're doing it and then playing hard on top of it, I'm going to live with some of those. I don't make the same mental mistakes. But some of those, you miss a layup, it happens. Okay, but are you playing hard? Did you get that opportunity because you dove on the floor for a loose ball and gave okay, great, good play, move the other end. So young people, I think you got to keep reminding them, move on to the next play with some confidence, even when things aren't going good. You hear a lot of people talk about, the simple thing to tell a player is that I believe in you. If you can just tell a kid that when they're at any time, but when they're really struggling, that it's amazing what happens. And, I think that's a really big key.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I know that some of my girls will tell you if you ask them that one of the things I always tell them is, mistakes have to happen. If you're not making mistakes, then you're not really trying. You're not really doing much to try. And I don't mind that, if mistakes happen, but if it happens where the mistake gets to you and now it's compounded to now where you've made another mistake because you haven't put that first mistake away, then that's, I think, when we start getting into more trouble. But
that's right.
That next play mentality, whether it's a great play or a not so great play, is having that mentality, I think works wonders. And
absolutely.
So really quick before we get into our concluding segment, I want to just really make sure that we specifically address practice and the way that you implement this. I know that we talked about how you break it up into pieces and build on it and go from there. But are there any other just specific, teaching points or things that you think coaches just really want to make sure that they're aware of if they're running through these type of sets and going through them in a practice situation?
Well, I think like any offense, spacing becomes a big key. No matter what the offense is, spacing is going to be huge. Understanding where you want the ball to go to from one spot to the next is key. But I think you got to be able to. I think you need to run it. I think you got to run it. 5-on-5. I think you got to play it live. It might only be in a half court set, depending on what you want to do that day. But I think you got to run it. I think you got to run it often. Again, try to put players in the positions where they can be successful, no matter what your offense is. How many players on your roster can be successful running it? It might not be for everybody, and probably not, high school, college. It might not be for everybody, but how many players can you help put in that position where they can be successful? And then sometimes it's where can you maybe hide some players offensively until they get better and catch up. I think those are all important parts as well as you move on with an offense.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to just bring up, and it's something, again, I know that I probably didn't do right away at the beginning of my coaching career, where I almost had picked the offense or picked what I was going to do before I even knew the players I had and whether or not they were in a position to be able to do it. And then I think that that's something I know I've learned along the way. And I know that, something I've joked about even on this podcast before is, I've probably seen things run before at clinics or on videos. And I'm like, oh, well, if the UConn women can do this, then great, I should do it too. But then I realized, I don't coach the UConn women. So,
well, I think as all of us coaches do that at some point in time. I think as we get older, we were able to probably recognize what our kids can do a little bit quicker, faster, and then make our own adjustments for what we want to do.
Yeah, and I think it just makes your life so much easier as a coach when you know where they are and where they're at, and you work with them in that capacity rather than try and get them to some destination already in mind. And I think that it just makes life easier for everybody when you assess them where they're at, work with what they have, improve them, but meet them where they are and kind of go from there. It probably will save a little bit of headache later on. So to wrap up, and I know we could be talking about this for hours and hours, but this is great. But to wrap up, Coach, there's a couple of questions that I ask every guest. So the first one, and I'm sure you have quite a few to choose for this, but for this first concluding question, what is a moment in your coaching career that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
Oh, wow, man, that's a great question. Well, I think the interesting part about it is for us coaches, obviously coaching is about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
35 years in for me, my first team in high school that I coached when I was 21, they go on to college, they go on to having families. It was 25 years. And my first players on one of my first teams reached out to me like 25 years later because her daughter was getting ready to go into high school.
Oh, wow.
High school basketball. And she wanted to thank me because after all these years and now her daughter going through it, she now appreciated so much more of what I tried to get her to do 25 years ago.
Oh, wow.
To me, that was a huge, brought tears to my eyes.
Oh, yeah.
When that happened, and that just said to me that, you know what, you're doing it the right way. Keep doing what you're doing. So that was a pretty special moment for me. And that was, like I said, 25 years after I coached my first team.
I mean, I can't express even for me, I've been coached about 8 years now, just having, those players reach out, those former players come, and whether it's, just saying hi or, telling you how they're doing or what they're up to. And it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling to hear from them and see what they're up to and see what they're doing. And, if you just did any, even if it was a huge role you had or something small that you did, just that you had that impact and there was something that you taught them or gave them that they've kept with them. Yeah, man, it seems like it makes everything worth it.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
That's great. And so finally, Coach, to wrap up what I give every guest, I like to call it my 60-second soapbox, but feel free to go longer. It's where you can get out your final thought, your closing message, just your closing idea that you would like to leave our listeners with. So, Coach, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor. Go ahead.
Well, look, I sure do appreciate you having me on. Sometimes us D2 coaches, we don't get the opportunity to do this. I love talking basketball. I enjoy it. It's a big part of my life. And I appreciate, giving back. Because I remember when I was a young coach, or first getting started, to the people that I, listened to and watched and, read about. And they meant such a big part of me. And the fact that now that we can do these podcast type things and I can reach people from all over the country and we just talk about basketball. I think that's a really special thing, and a really something that kind of in some ways have gone by the wayside. So, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing this. I'd love to do more, different subjects, different things like that. If people want to reach out to me, I'm going to give you my email. It's Mark, MARKM, at usca.edu. Feel free, ask questions, talk about high-low, talk about whatever. I enjoy it. It's never, some people think, I don't have time. I'll find time. It might be at 5 a.m, but I'll find time because that's something I enjoy. So I just want to thank you, Coach, for having me on. We really don't know each other, but I've enjoyed it, and I feel like we do know each other.
Yeah.
Over an hour, so that made it really comfortable. And I just want to say I appreciate everything that you've done, and and allowing me to be part of this tonight.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it. And it's such a great opportunity. I know that with everything going on in the world right now here in 2020, there's a lot of challenges, but if we could use some of this for good to connect and talk about the game and bring people together, then that's something positive that hopefully we can take from this. So I greatly appreciate the kind words, and I want to thank you again for spending some time talking about basketball, talking about high-low, talking about other things that came up with. Thanks a lot, and good luck in the future. Hopefully you're able to have a full season. Hopefully everybody's able to stay safe, and best of luck going forward, Coach. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. Greatly appreciate your support as always. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.